Welcome to the Debug Lounge, our short interview series with other game developers. Today on the show we have Kaylin Normanslack. Welcome, Kaylin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you for being one of our initial guinea pigs.
I was excited. I was really excited when you guys posted that. I was like, I really want to talk to these guys.
That was amazing. Like with I think Andrew already mentioned this in our last podcast of the debug log, but he was saying like immediately when we posted, like within 5-10 minutes, 2 people were already responding. So that was like amazing. Seeing you guys respond so quickly. So it should be good. Should be fun.
Yeah. This will be good. So to get started, Kaylin, how about you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry?
Well, my name's Kaylin. I'm a Libra. No.
Long walks in the park.
Yeah.
Well, my name's Kaylin Normanslack, and I'm a game designer, game developer. I'm an indie. I don't really know what to call myself now. I work in my free time on a project called Alicorn Princess Blast with a team of what are we at now? Like 14, 15 people. It's a lot of people. And sort of how I got into the industry was I decided to commit to it when I was in high school. Graduating high school, try to learn what game design, actually was. Because back then, before, the big indie boom, there wasn't a lot of information going around on what game designers actually did. Mm-hmm. So it was me like, I want to do this. Okay, what do we actually do? And so I just kind of kept studying it, as more information became available, and eventually I started working on, my own little games, and then I kind of wound up here working on APB with my friends.
Cool. What made you say I want to do this? What got you into
inspiration?
Yeah. What was that inspiration moment?
It was back in '95 when I had my first Super Nintendo. I was my parents had bought me Super Mario All-Stars, and they describe it very differently, but I was just kind of engrossed in the game. And I guess what inspired me was the beautiful simplicity of it. It was very simple, very easy to understand, and through that whole mechanism, they delivered this amazing experience. And that's kind of was like, I want to do that. I want to make simple, amazing experiences.
Yeah. That's
so that was the initial spark for me.
Cool. Yeah, it's the way you answered it felt like very game designer-ish. Because from a programming standpoint, I used to look and see it, look at games and be like, I think I can make it do, engineer that way or do something like that. But it was like the beautiful simplicity of a game that really inspired you, which is really cool. A really interesting way of, interesting perspective of it. So that's cool.
Yeah, very cool. Well, tell us about this game, this project you're working on now.
Okay. Well, the game is called Alicorn Princess Blast, and it is a shoot 'em up about a magical pony princess that shoots bugs with lasers. See, that always gets a laugh. That always gets a laugh.
It's a hit. I can do it.
So, with the game, you play as this character named Princess Zenith, and you're going against this, very scary guy called the Fearmonger, and he's basically gone inside of everybody's dreams and has brought all of, their fears to real life, and so in order to save your kingdom, you have to overcome your fears, and that's kind of the main hook of the game.
That's cool.
So we're using that as kind of a little bit of a teaching moment, I guess, and then we're trying to do a few things different with it. Like every indie game out there, we're taking We're sort of looking at Star Fox, and we're looking at Sky Shark and Raiden, and trying to figure out how to play with those systems to figure out what we can make that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So far so good.
Okay. How far along? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just wondering, you said shoot 'em up, so it's more like a Star Fox perspective shoot 'em up, or?
It's like Raiden, more like Raiden.
Okay.
The Raiden series. Mm-hmm. I include Star Fox though because we have level branching. We have a type of level branching or a level pathing system.
Okay.
But it's more akin to Raiden, and our initial inspiration for that game was for Sky Shark. which is like this old Nintendo game that we played, and I could not beat the first level for the life of me. Every time I tried to play it, it may have been like badly put together or something, but like have you ever played those old Nintendo games where the sprites flicker? Like like, it was hard for me to see what was going on, and so I couldn't beat the first level, but I really enjoyed it. So
I think most Nintendo games are like that. You have a game like, I could play the first level, but I don't know anything else. I can't beat it. So.
Yeah.
Because there was really ever tutorials or anything. It was just like, they just threw you in this world and you have to figure it out.
I think they play tested back then, though. Because how could you beat that?
Exactly. Cool. You mentioned, like, I think, was this offline? But you just said, like, the size of your team was, like, 14, 15 people. Like, how did you meet these people? Like, for an indie developer that's just, like, trying to get into the game industry, meeting people to start a game, like, how does that happen?
Especially as a game designer, too. That's the one people
especially as a
get
game
into
designer,
it.
I can't deny that luck played a part of it. I guess I kind of have to start from the beginning, but I'll make it brief. The whole project started with like 5 people. It was me, my buddy Tim, who's the lead programmer on the project. We had an artist who is really good at like concept art and things. We had a sound designer, and we all just met at this pony party, which is a lot different than what most people think. It was actually like just people chilling out, and we got to talking about making games. And we figured out that we all really liked it, and we wanted to make a game that was inspired by the show we all liked. And so we were like, yeah, let's do it. And it got to a certain point where we thought, we actually have some talent here. Oh, snap, I forgot to mention there was a pixel artist among us, which is really what drove it. But we were like, we really have some talent here. So we decided to sort of take the little fan game that we were making and move it away from like the property that we were trying to make an homage to, and that's how Alicorn Princess Blast got started. And so as the project kept going, we showed it at conventions, and the kids loved it, which was awesome to see as a designer. Up to that point, I had like really low self-esteem, and I was like, oh no, all the decisions I'm making are terrible, no.
Yeah.
And so it's the moment that there's a moment I kind of hold, I guess, close to me, which is it's at a convention that I'm volunteering at the same time, and I get called to the game room that I had helped set up, and I look, and there's these kids like clamoring to play the game, and there's just a tear down my eyes.
No,
like a movie moment. It was like a movie moment. Like, oh, it's so beautiful. And so from that point, more people started looking at the game, and they're like, oh man, this actually looks really good. And so they just kind of started joining, and we were like, yeah, sure, you can come in. Part of how we got a team, or able to maintain a team that big, as well as the type of environment that we have. It's all online, which there's very little physical contact, except like for me and my close friends who are on the project. But we kind of have sort of a pseudo learning environment, which is borrowed over from another project that I worked on when I was in college with that team. And a lot of us, I guess, by industry terms, will qualify for junior positions, I guess, because we weren't this well-oiled machine. We were literally just kind of this team that came together and said, let's do this. And so it's great, but at the same time, it's had its problems. But that's really how it went from 5 people to like 14, 15 people in like 2 years.
What are some of the tools you guys use, especially being a designer? What's the stuff you're doing every day? Are you using Slack or using Google Docs?
Stuff like that too, as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Unity for development. Let's see, we're using Trello. We tried Slack. I may have set it up wrong, but I set it up so that every time there was a commit on like our Bitbucket account, like it would get sent to the development chat. So the development chat's just a stream of Bitbucket commit messages.
That's a good problem to have.
We actually did the same thing on one of our side projects, but the problem is we never commit or did any work on that project.
So that channel is quiet.
Yeah, so the developers got annoyed, and we were like, okay, we won't use Slack. So now we just use Trello. And I think the producers on our project are talking about firing up Jira, for the first time, and I think Tim just got finished building like a server to host it on or something.
Okay.
Let's see other tools that we use. Google Drive, Microsoft Word.
Is that for like design decisions and lore and stuff?
Yeah, design decisions, design documentation. There's this other tool, Lucid Chart, because I don't have Visio. We use Lucid Chart, which is kind of like a little, I guess, Google Apps alternative for making behavior trees.
Right.
And for a point in time, I was super into behavior trees. Like I really liked making those.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we have a designer full on the show, what's your stance on the design doc? How extensive do you get, especially with a remote team? I'm sure it's some, but how much of it is like, this is a formalized documentation, or I'm just going to talk to you guys in chat real quick and tell you, how strong to make that bullet or something. You know what I mean? Like, how formal is that process for you?
It changed. It changed throughout the project. So when this kind of goes back to when I was like getting into game design. There was this huge point where I was like, what do game designers do? And then I learned about the design document, and this was at a time where designers were like, the design document is obsolete. But I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I can write my thoughts down formally, and people can just understand that. Mm-hmm. So it started out as sort of this formal documentation where I had this entire it was a pseudo framework based off of the Chris Taylor template, which can be found online for free. But it had like this table of contents, it had all these sections. It looked like a formal business document, except it was like 30 pages, which is pretty small, actually. But as time went on, I started relying on the document less and less, because as I started getting further into Unity, I had to start making design decisions on the fly. So I look at the design document as like, it's a good place to make assumptions about how you think your design will work, but once you actually get into the process of making the game, there's a lot of on-the-fly decisions you have to make that won't really jive with what you've wrote in the document. So it serves as a good basis to start.
Cool.
That was a long way to get to
that.
That's
good.
Right?
Yeah, that was good. Speaking of like design decisions and driving a project, especially like with a remote group and with a group of 14 plus people, like are decisions made solely by the designers, or are they collective group for more of an online collaborative environment, indie group, or is it are you just handling all the design decisions and people are just implementing these?
I am handling. I guess that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. I tried to have somewhat of a democratic design environment where we can all pitch in, but I usually end up doing a lot of the decision making. Okay. They've cast me as the lead designer, so I'm like, okay, power. I guess I'll play the lead. Everyone sees power. I see a giant list of responsibilities.
You're like, it usually becomes like, I don't know, just make it like this. It's fine.
It's like, okay.
I've had some of those moments where it's just like, okay, let's just do it this way. It works.
Yeah.
But managing a group like that is we're all split up into teams, and we all have different meeting times. So like the design group will meet. The design group, which is like me and I think 4 other people, we'll meet Monday. We'll discuss like we'll do our Scrum meeting where we discuss what changes we've done, and because we're at the point where we're actually building the levels, so there's not a lot of design stuff going on. So we'll discuss the changes we've done, and then we'll talk about what needs to happen next, and then I'll just kind of assign tasks through the Trello, and then we'll just kind of disperse. But the team, this happens sort of within the few different teams too. So we have Tim leads the programming team, which they're more like tools developers, and there's an art team, and there's like a PR team, and we all have separate meetings, but we all meet like every Wednesday at like 8, where it's like the most we've seen in a room, because they all have daytime jobs, the most we've seen in a room is like 8 or 9 people, and we'll just go down the list of here's the changes that we've all made, here's what needs to happen next. And so that's the one point where we really sync, and that's something I took from it must have been back in, I believe, 2010 when I tried to make Traced.
So what's one of your biggest challenges in, and maybe that organization, or it could be something else, like putting this entire project together? What's a particular battle you fought?
Definitely organization is one of them. Let's see. Before I had my team of 4 designers, I was just basically doing all of it myself. And Tim and I are similar in that we are ruthless workhorses, and and it wasn't very good for my health. So
It's like
they
one of those. What's your worst attribute? It's like, I work too hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm super detail oriented and I work too hard. And
I just can't let go.
I can't be the best employee ever.
So, another challenge that we've also had was, well, I mean, there have always been disagreements that we've come to, and it's just kind of managing those. Because this isn't like a well-oiled team that like walked out of Microsoft or something and decided to make indie games. Like, we came off the street, and so a lot of us come from different backgrounds, and a lot of us react differently to situations. So it's really managing all of that too. I can recount specific examples. Tim and I have progressed to the point where, as leads, we can argue, but then like get a drink afterwards.
Oh, I think that's really important. That's actually should be an episode one day. I think. Well, just about how to collaborate objectively and be able to criticize without getting personal feelings hurt and stuff. That's valuable.
Yeah,
if you find somebody who do that.
Yeah, even in the past for me, and being on a remote team, like especially when you're dealing with, a lot of people, when you have like conflict in your decision making, there's like potential for people to, just up and leave and say, hey, this isn't working out for me, or just no longer want to participate because of decisions made, or the game took a different direction than they wanted it to take. So, like, just managing that is really important, especially for indie team and remote team.
We've had that a couple times where people have kind of left, and it's always been sad to see them go. But one of the things I've always maintained with the teams is that like this project is, I mean, it's more of like a rev share project because we all just came together and we don't have like a budget. Anybody could leave, and because every person on the team has a specific value that they add to it, without them it could break down the entire project. So there was a point where our pixel artist left, which you can't have a pixel art game without a pixel artist, and so. That led to like this long, exasperated search of like 6 to 8 months of just trying to find a replacement, and that just kind of hammered into everyone, I think, how important it is that we all be there.
Mm-hmm. Good, very good. So, what's your timeline for this game then? What's the schedule or release?
We're looking at sometime next year. Looking at sometime next year. We're narrowing in slowly on like a release date. Because this is a project and because we all have like daytime jobs, we'll have deadlines that we think we'll make, but then something terrible happens and then we end up having to push it back.
Exactly.
What we don't want this to be is a game we release in like 2030. Because this project, compared to a lot of what you see indie game wise, is admittedly small. The game is like we took a lot of inspiration from the level structure of Jamestown, which the game is like 6 levels and it's like an hour of gameplay. We were trying to do something similar, which who'd think that you'd have all this work for like an hour of gameplay, but
yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. Question, like, what platform are you targeting for APV? Is it mobile or is it like what's the ideal platform? It's been quite a discussion.
Speaking of challenges, sore subject. Whoa, move on.
First we wanted to put it on like every platform imaginable, but then we were like, wait, that would cost thousands of dollars that we don't have, just to give dev kits for testing. But we managed to get on ID at Xbox, so that's a platform. I think ID at Xbox and Windows is what we're targeting. We're also looking at Steam, and there's a few more. Down the line, but there's a few places we're looking at. We also had a discussion about putting it on the 3DS, which I thought it would make a great addition to their whole thing, but I couldn't say anything because I was working at Nintendo at the time.
Sweet, cool. So what's the big marketing plan? I guess, do you start, how far, when you're thinking about a game, it's going to come out in a year. Do you start releasing trailers? I mean, you've already said you've gone to some conventions and stuff, so has the marketing push already started?
Yes and no. So the way that we've often marketed our game is, and the way we've set our deadlines is from convention to convention. So we would show a build at a convention, and then like rapidly look for other conventions to show it at, and then the day that convention started was our deadline. And so that's how we did it for a time, and that was sort of how we did our marketing. We're trying to move towards a more, I guess, traditional marketing style where we have social media and we're out there a lot more. But it's been a hard move, mainly because most of us are working on the game. So not a lot of us have time to kind of sit on Twitter or Facebook, because we're trying to squash all these bugs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely going to happen, especially with any game that you run into, especially as an indie developer. You kind of have to manage those resources, and it's really hard to given time. One other question is like your target market for the game. I remember you saying that you before you had it in a room and there's like a lot of kids just playing it. Is there a specific age range that you guys are targeting for APB or?
Not really. I mean, at first because we had to, and part of what got APB this far, I should mention, is that it also was my senior project. So like we had a lot of help from like the university to just get our bearings straight, and we had to define, because they were more traditional, we had to define a set market. And at first we were like for kids 10 plus, so it was like an E10 plus or something. But then we were like, oh, we're targeting the age range of 12 to like 15, but at a certain point we just kind of dropped it and said, well, we'll just have this be for everybody, because when we showed it at conventions, not only did kids play it, but senior citizens like played the game too, and they found it enjoyable. So we were like, okay, we can't really narrow because everybody who's playing this game really enjoys it.
Cool. Another side comment is just that you said that it stemmed from your senior project, and that's exactly how the Mobius guys. We talked to them on our podcast. Their project that won an IGF award stemmed from his senior project, so that's really cool. So definitely cool.
I don't know if our project is IGF material yet, but we're hoping.
Yeah.
Stay in school, kids.
Yeah. Exactly.
Stay in school. Exactly.
All right, this is fun, man. So before we go, what's like a good piece of advice for all the developers out there that are doing the same thing you're doing, or just want to get into that, want to find a team like you did? What's the best thing you can tell them?
Well, let's see. I figured you guys would ask a question about like this, so I thought I'd been thinking about it for a while. What's the one thing that kept me kind of going? And I guess perseverance. You have to just what's a good way to describe it? Other than the word perseverance, you have to keep trying, and you have to look at failure in a different way. Because when I started, I looked at failure as, oh goodness, that's the end of my career. But as an indie developer, failure is just an opportunity to learn, and it took me a long time to think in that way. And I kind of hold now that kind of the only difference between a beginner and a master is that the master's failed a ton of times.
Good.
And they're easy to just admit, oh well, this isn't working. Yeah, definitely perseverance.
Very
Perseverance
cool.
Perseverance and keep a love of learning, because you're going to be doing it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that goes into the idea that we talked about before, about it's a process. You get in love with the process, not in like, that game came out, it didn't do well, I'm sad now. It's like, well, but I learned so much and I'm making a new game,
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about it a lot. It's just that game developers have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. It's kind of required. It's everyone that gets into game development, as an indie developer at least, has to be somewhat of an entrepreneur and willing to take those steps and take those risks. So, well said, Kaylin.
I'm definitely getting there myself. Like I'm not what you'd call the top entrepreneur, but it's like, oh hey, this would be a cool game. Or I feel like I'm in the bottom tier, but that's because I've only been doing this for I've only just started kind of really getting into making games for maybe 2-3 years. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm getting up there, but like I said, perseverance. I'll get there eventually. Slow and steady and all that.
Well said. Well, on that note, I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, are braving the first few episodes, but this is great. I had so much fun. This proves the existence of the show. So, awesome. So we'll link up to anything you have in the show notes and videos and all that stuff. But thank you so much, Kaylin, for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, talk to you later. Bye.